Try not to let this world get you down. Try not to let this life get you down. Try to not let yourself get you down. I need everybody to forget about the troubles and worries from yesterday. And I need you to look ahead and keep moving and keep moving and living life. I said keep on living. Sometimes life gets you down, so you calm down on yourself. Don't give up, just push on. I say, when the darkness starts to be and your world it seems to be cool and your heart needs a redo, just remember to stop and try. When the sun don't seem to peek and your friends they start to leave you, this reality can't deceive you. Just remember it all works out in the end. I know if I can't stop you, then I'm gonna show it. I pass it around like the loud moment. I gotta dance, I gotta move, I gotta dance. I know if I can't stop you, then I'm gonna show it. I pass it around like the loud moment. I share the Lord, that's because I'm still alive. Yeah.
Hello!
I like the reverb on it. Okay.
Hello! Guten van Amsterdam!
We're here, guys.
The Ancillary explorers have landed in Amsterdam.
We officially made it to the Netherlands in Holland, and we've made it to the tulip fields.
And it is so radiant and beautiful, and I am so excited that you guys are here with us experiencing it.
You guys have had some amazing questions for us so far. Totally different from the other cities. Starting to pull out some really cool, intriguing stuff. It's really going to be kind of a fun thing to start digging in and seeing what Amsterdam has to offer. So, Amsterdam, here we are.
Here we go! Let's go see what we can find! Blast off!
Amsterdam is the capital city of the Netherlands. Under King William Alexander's rule, 821,000 people live here, riding 881,000 bicycles with 165 different canals. Amsterdam functions with a parliamentary representative democracy, constitutional monarchy, and a decentralized unitary state.
It's fun.
This is, yes, right. And action.
Happy King's Day from Amsterdam. Today is the celebration of the King of the Netherlands' birthday. All the orange represents his royal house, and today is the celebration of their country, of community. It's a day of celebration, and we're so happy to be here with them.
On April 27th every year, 700,000 to 900,000 people flock to Amsterdam to celebrate King Willem Alexander's birthday. King Willem Alexander ascended the throne to the Netherlands on April 30th, 2013, succeeding his mother Queen Beatrix after her abdication, much like she did with her mother Queen Juliana several decades prior. King's Day will occur on April 27th until the next reigning monarch ascends the throne. Before King's Day and King Willem Alexander's rule, Queen's Day took place on April 30th in honor of Queen Beatrix. And although Queen Beatrix's birthday did fall on January 31st, when she was ascending the throne and her mother, Queen Juliana, was abdicating, Queen Beatrix decided to keep the day of Queen's Day on April 30th in honor of her mother.
Alright students, it's time for another segment of Get Savvy. We are officially here in the Netherlands, and once you cross that channel and that water, you better make sure you switch up your currency because those pounds are not going to be accepted. Now we're dealing with euros. Another thing that you need to stay savvy when you get that money is do not be confused by the fact that they use commas instead of periods as their markers. Whenever you come here, if something's 13 euros and 80 cents, it's going to have a comma in between those. You better stay savvy when you get here and don't get confused thinking you're dealing in thousands. Well, we had a question from Jaslyn about people in Amsterdam not really using curtains.
We did some research and we were wondering why people that live in Amsterdam don't like to use curtains.
And we are here, obviously, on King's Day because you guys are seeing all this orange throughout the crowd, which is so fun. It's basically like imagine St. Patrick's Day in the US, but everybody's wearing orange. It's really weird. So basically, there's a party going on upstairs, and it kind of fits in with people not having curtains.
Yes, Jaslyn, it's true. People in Amsterdam don't really seem to use curtains on their windows. It mostly comes down to an aesthetic preference because no one really wants to have anything obstructing their view. Most homes have windows overlooking canals, pretty landscapes, and unique architecture. Even houses that have curtains seem to leave them open most of the time so that they can enjoy the look of the cityscapes outside their windows.
It's pretty cool. What's going on? And it's a really pretty night on King's Day.
Why is Amsterdam below sea level?
Why the heck is Amsterdam below sea level? Well, actually, it was kind of a hard question to figure out. But what we did find out was that Amsterdam has not changed locations since its origins, despite the populace growing and growing. And the more people that were there, the more land they needed for farming. And what land they had was constantly being flooded. So what did they do? They built dams and they erected windmills, all to redistribute the water back out to the sea. And the crazy thing is, some of the locals that we've talked to have expressed concern with the growing climate changes that are happening day in and day out. So much so that in March of this year, they started reinforcing their biggest dam, Orange-Nassau, in preparation for the rising sea levels. So, we may not have all the answers as to exactly why it's below sea level, but we can see why they're continuing to thrive despite that.
And as April just stated for you guys, since the residents here do live below sea level, that's why they're doing something about it now and not denying it. They don't have time to deny what's going on because for the people that live here in the beautiful city of Amsterdam, they're already living the consequences of climate change daily. And for them, it's a matter of survival.
Is this what I become? Terrified and numb, broken and beaten down, too afraid to even make a sound. And all I ever wanted
15th century, cultivated in the Ottoman Empire, known today as present-day Turkey, where one of the kings became so crazed with them that he started building gardens. He just put them everywhere, all around. People became so obsessed with the flower that they actually became so expensive that in 1592 there was something known as the tulip mania. And this was basically a huge craze where everybody needed tulips. Holland, the Netherlands, they just needed their tulips. So they actually became so expensive that they started to become a currency. And people actually were able to trade them for other items among other people in their villages. People used them as money to actually trade things and buy things. And the flowers you see behind us right now are the exact flowers that you guys can go up to Holland, Michigan, where they have tulip festivals all the time. There's a very heavy population of people that have actually immigrated to the US from here, and since there are these heavy populations of people from the Netherlands, tulips have also become kind of a thing. But despite all of that, they're so beautiful, the people love them so much, they have festivals all the time honoring them. Whenever you guys find yourself in Holland, make sure you remember this is where you go. But if you can't make it, or you guys can't wait to see them, make your way up to Michigan in the US. You guys will be able to see something very similar. If you can't make your way over here to Amsterdam, you can find tulips and festivals that are also actually quite similar to what we're seeing here, and some of the fun things that you get to do here in Amsterdam. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the meal. So if you guys find yourself in Holland, and whenever you guys come to Amsterdam, you better make sure you stay savvy and know that these are not necessarily native, but they are all over it, and they're the country's pride.
Why do we know her name? Why do we know Anne Frank's name? Because we know her story. But here's the thing, her story is only one of 6 million narratives that we cannot forget about, that we have to talk about. Yes, we've all read the Diary of Anne Frank, but do you know how colossal this is? Today, the Ancillary explorers are lucky enough and grateful enough to be standing in front of the Anne Frank house, where Anne Frank, Otto Frank, Edith Frank, Margot Frank, Mr. and Mrs. Van Pels, their son Peter, his mangy cat, and Mr. Fritz hid for 2 years of their life, for they were being persecuted and could be killed at any minute. Who was Anne Frank? Well, when you read her diary, you find out that she's a perky 15-year-old girl who likes to write, who dreams of being a writer, who is confused about whether or not she likes boys. And for 2 years of her life, from 1942 to 1944, she lived in this attic in silence, in quiet, in small, close quarters, questioning every day if she was going to survive or be able to live to the next. Sadly, in 1944, the Gestapo came in and arrested her and her family, and her father was the only one that survived. Anne Frank writes in her book about hearing those bells, and it was something she looked forward to because at a certain time in the day when the bells rang, it meant everyone left for work and that she could be a little louder. There aren't really words, I guess because it just makes me realize how real this story was and how When you read about it in textbooks, when you read it and you see these pictures of all the rings and the hair, it doesn't really sink in, but standing here and vividly remember reading about these bells and hearing them just makes me realize it just humanizes it all. Many of you have heard of Anne Frank, but who was she? She was a girl that was born in Frankfurt, Germany, and at 4.5 years old, her father and her family moved here to Amsterdam, where he took up a job here, which led him, that's how he actually found the place to go into hiding with Miep Gies. In 1933, that's when they moved here, because the Hitler regime had just come into power. And in 1938, the Franks lost all citizenship rights because simply that they were Jewish. And in 1942 was the year that the Franks were forced to go into hiding. So Anne Frank, this spunky 15-year-old girl who loved to write, who dreamed of being a writer, who spent time putting posters of movie stars up on her walls, and it's a very sobering fact to be standing here and realizing that she was just a person like you and me. I like to write. I keep a journal. She did the same thing. She was just a person. The Diary of Anne Frank is one of the most read novels in the world. And in how we still have that document, because Anne, Margot, Edith all passed away at Bergen-Belsen due to a typhus outbreak. But her father, Otto Frank, survived. And he was brave enough to come back to this house where Miep Gies, his secretary who had helped hide them, had saved Anne's diary. One of my favorite quotes comes from Anne's diary, which is, "Despite everything, I still believe people are really good at heart." And that is something I try to keep in my heart every day with the world around us when we see tragedy, when we see hurt, pain, hatred, anger. I hold on to her words immensely, because if she of all people could say that and see that, then we all should be able to see it too. You know, I ask myself every time I look at World War II, how did this escalate? How did over 6 million people die? And then I realize it's because it didn't happen overnight. It was a slow and steady course. Take a country that was living in poverty and just came out of a war, was reeling in fear. Fear was everywhere. Fear for their safety, fear for their lives, essentially the economy. So they all stood up and they became very passionate and patriotic. And they found a charismatic leader that they could fall behind that gave them hope. So yes, the Nazi Party came into power in 1933, but it was 5 years before the extermination of the Jewish population really came into play. If you look up the 14 signs of fascism, you see how simple it is and how easy it is to fall down that line and have that happen. One of the first characteristics is powerful and continuing nationalism. Basically a constant use of patriotic mottos where flags can be seen waving everywhere. Second warning, the disdain for the recognition of human rights. See, when you're living in fear and you're worried for your safety, you tend to overlook things, human rights or basic security that you maybe took for granted because you're living in fear. An identification of enemies or a scapegoat as a unifying cause. Heightened patriotism over the need to eliminate the problem or perceived common threat brings people together. When you're all afraid of the same thing, it brings you together, right? Which makes something like this spin out of control even faster. I'm really sad. Why do we know her name? Why do we know Anne Frank's name? Because we know her story.